Power corrupts, but justice always triumphs. These words echoed in Sarah Miller's mind as she stared at the gun barrel pointed at her, wondering how a simple evening could have spiraled so out of control. Sarah Miller, Deputy Director of the Bureau of Criminal Investigations, BCI, never imagined that her drive home after a long day at work would turn into a confrontation that would challenge everything she believed in. At 42, Sarah had climbed the ranks of the BCI thanks to her sharp intelligence, unwavering integrity, and determination to uphold the law. Ironically, it was precisely this law she had sworn to defend that would be put to the test that night. The sky was darkening when Sarah left the BCI offices, located in the heart of the city. The last light of day was fading, giving way to a night that promised to be calm. Sarah got into her black sedan, a discreet but elegant model, reflecting her reserved but assured personality. She was eager to get home, kick off her painful heels, and dive into the latest crime novel she had started the night before. The city streets passed before her eyes, familiar and reassuring. Sarah knew every corner of this metropolis she had sworn to protect. She was already thinking about the important meeting scheduled for the next day, where she was to present a new training program to combat discrimination within law enforcement, a subject particularly close to her heart. Suddenly, the flash of police lights in her rearview mirror jolted her from her thoughts. Sarah glanced at her speedometer. She was driving exactly at the speed limit. Perplexed but calm, she pulled over to the side of the road, as procedure required. She had trained hundreds of officers during her career and knew the protocol for a traffic stop by heart. Sarah turned off the engine and turned on the interior light of her car, making sure her hands remained visible on the steering wheel. These gestures, she had repeated countless times during the training sessions she gave, emphasizing the importance of reassuring officers during a nighttime stop. The officer who approached her car was tall and robust. His badge read, E. Thompson. Sarah immediately noticed the tension in his gait and the clenching of his jaw. Something wasn't right. "Good evening, officer," Sarah said in a calm and professional voice when Thompson reached her. "May I ask the reason for this stop?" Thompson narrowed his eyes, scrutinizing the interior of the car before replying curtly, "License and vehicle registration." Sarah frowned. The officer hadn't answered her question, which was contrary to standard procedure. "I understand, officer, but I'd like to know the reason for this stop first, if you don't mind." Thompson's face hardened. "Listen, ma'am, I don't have to justify myself. Show me your papers, that's all." Sarah felt a knot form in her stomach. The situation was taking a worrying turn. "Officer Thompson," she said, keeping a respectful but firm tone, "I'm perfectly willing to cooperate, but I have the right to know the reason for this stop. It's standard procedure." Thompson suddenly hit the car door, making Sarah jump. "Don't talk to me about procedure. I'm the one giving orders here. Get out of the car. Now." Sarah's heart raced. She knew the situation could quickly escalate if she didn't keep her cool. "Officer, I will not get out of the car without a valid reason. I don't feel safe." Thompson's eyes filled with anger. "You think you're above the law? People like you always think you can get away with it." Sarah inwardly flinched at these words. "People like me?" She suddenly understood that this wasn't a simple traffic stop, but something far more sinister. "Officer Thompson," she said, striving to keep her voice steady, "I think there's a misunderstanding. I'm Sarah Miller, Deputy Director of the Bureau of Criminal Investigations. Here's my card." She slowly reached towards the glove compartment to retrieve her identification card, but Thompson suddenly stepped back, drawing his weapon. "Don't move," he shouted, pointing his gun directly at Sarah. Time seemed to stand still. Sarah stared at the gun barrel, her heart pounding. She had faced dangerous criminals, dismantled trafficking networks, but never had she felt such fear. The fear of dying not as a hero in the line of duty, but as a victim of a senseless act of police violence. "Officer Thompson," she said softly, hands clearly visible, "please lower your weapon. We can resolve this situation peacefully." But Thompson seemed to have lost all sense of reason. "Shut up. You're lying. A black woman can't be deputy director of the BCI. Get out of this car immediately." Thompson's words hit Sarah like a slap. Throughout her career, she had fought against prejudices, proving through her work and dedication that she deserved her place. And now, in a matter of seconds, everything she had accomplished was reduced to nothing by an officer's prejudices. Sarah took a deep breath. She knew that her next actions would be crucial, not only for her immediate safety but also for everything she represented. "Officer Thompson," she said in a calm but firm voice, "I'm recording this incident on my phone. Your actions and words are being recorded. I'm asking you one last time to lower your weapon and comply with standard procedure." Thompson hesitated for a moment, visibly destabilized by this revelation. But his anger quickly took over again. "I don't care about your recording. Who will believe you anyway? It's my word against yours." It was at this precise moment that Sarah realized the extent of the problem she was facing. It wasn't just an officer abusing his power. It was an entire system that allowed such abuses to occur. A system she had sworn to serve and protect, but which, at this moment, was putting her in danger. Suddenly, the sound of a siren in the distance broke the tense silence of the night. Another police car was approaching. Thompson nervously glanced over his shoulder, his gun still pointed at Sarah. The car stopped a few meters away, and a middle-aged man quickly got out. Sarah immediately recognized the local police chief, Alan Reeves. Momentary relief washed over her, but she remained on guard, aware that the situation was far from resolved. "Thompson, what's going on here?" Reeves' voice was strong and authoritative. Thompson turned around, visibly surprised by his superior's arrival. "Chief, this woman refuses to cooperate. She claims to be a high-ranking official, but—" "Lower your weapon immediately," Reeves ordered, approaching with long strides. He turned to Sarah, his eyes widening in recognition. "Ms. Miller? My God! What's happening here?" Sarah, still tense but relieved by Reeves' presence, calmly explained the situation. "Chief Reeves, I was stopped without apparent reason by Officer Thompson. When I asked for explanations, he became aggressive and ended up pointing his gun at me." Reeves turned to Thompson, his face filled with anger and disappointment. "Thompson, give me your weapon. You're suspended until further notice." Thompson, suddenly realizing the gravity of his actions, tried to justify himself. "But Chief, I didn't know who she was. She could have been dangerous." "Dangerous?" Reeves' voice was icy. "You threatened an innocent citizen with your weapon, not to mention the fact that she's the deputy director of the BCI. Your behavior is inexcusable." While Reeves disarmed Thompson, Sarah slowly got out of her car, her legs shaking slightly as the adrenaline began to wear off. "Ms. Miller," said Reeves, turning to her, "I am deeply sorry for this incident. I assure you we will conduct a thorough investigation." Sarah nodded, her mind already analyzing the implications of what had just happened. "Chief Reeves, I appreciate your apologies, but this incident raises questions far broader than the behavior of a single officer." She took a deep breath before continuing. "If this can happen to me, a high-ranking government official, imagine what ordinary citizens, especially people of color, experience daily." Reeves lowered his eyes, visibly uncomfortable. "You're right, Ms. Miller. This is a systemic problem that we need to address." In the days that followed, the incident made headlines. BCI Deputy Director Victim of Police Violence, read The Washington Post. Social media exploded, sharing the video of the incident that Sarah had recorded. Sarah found herself thrust into the center of a national debate on police violence and systemic racism. Peaceful demonstrations took place in several major cities, calling for reforms within law enforcement. Despite the media pressure and emotional stress, Sarah decided to use this experience as a catalyst for change. She organized a press conference a week after the incident. Standing before a crowd of journalists and cameras, Sarah spoke in a clear and determined voice. "What happened to me is unfortunately not an isolated incident. It's a reflection of a deeply rooted problem in our society. But I'm not here today to point fingers or to stir up anger. I'm here to propose solutions." She then unrolled a 5-point plan to reform police practices, mandatory and ongoing training on unconscious bias and de-escalation for all police officers, the establishment of an independent oversight body to investigate complaints against the police, widespread use of body cameras and transparency in accessing recordings, a review of hiring and promotion procedures to promote diversity within law enforcement, a community outreach program to strengthen ties between the police and the communities they serve. It won't be easy, Sarah concluded. It will take effort, patience, and compassion from everyone. But it's necessary work if we want to build a more just and safer society for all. The weeks that followed were intense. Sarah juggled between her responsibilities at the BCI and her new role as spokesperson for police reform. She met with legislators, police chiefs, community leaders, and civil rights activists. Meanwhile, the investigation into the incident progressed. Officer Thompson was dismissed from the police force and charged with abuse of power and endangerment. His trial became a symbol of the fight against police violence. On the day of her testimony in court, Sarah stood upright at the witness stand, her gaze briefly meeting Thompson's as he sat at the defense table. "Ms. Miller," the prosecution lawyer began, "can you tell us how you felt when Officer Thompson pointed his gun at you?" Sarah took a moment before answering, carefully weighing her words. "I was afraid," she said simply, "not just for my life, but for what it meant. I've devoted my career to upholding the law, to protecting citizens. And in an instant, I understood what so many others feel daily. Powerlessness in the face of a system meant to protect us, but which sometimes threatens us," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "But beyond fear, I felt sadness. Sadness for Officer Thompson, who let his prejudices cloud his judgment. Sadness for our society, which still allows such incidents to occur." The defense lawyer tried to minimize the incident, suggesting that Sarah might have misinterpreted Thompson's actions. But Sarah remained steadfast, relying on the facts and the video recording that corroborated her testimony. She concluded her intervention with these words: "This trial is not just about Officer Thompson. It's the trial of a system that allowed this to happen. We all have the responsibility to do better." After several days of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict. Thompson was found guilty on all counts. The judge, taking into account the gravity of the case and its societal impact, sentenced him to 3 years in prison and a lifetime ban from working in law enforcement. The sentence made headlines, but for Sarah, it was just the beginning. She knew that real change would take time and require sustained efforts. In the months that followed, Sarah worked tirelessly to implement her reform plan. She collaborated with Congress to pass a police accountability law, which included many of her initial proposals. The debates were heated, but ultimately, the law was passed with a wide bipartisan majority. A year after the incident, Sarah was invited to deliver a speech at the National Police Academy graduation ceremony. Standing before hundreds of new officers, she shared her experience and vision. "You are about to enter a noble profession," she said. "But with this badge comes an immense responsibility. You will have the power to protect, but also the power to harm. Every day you will have to choose what kind of officer you want to be. I urge you to choose compassion, integrity, and justice." She ended her speech to thunderous applause, many cadets with tears in their eyes. For the first time in a long time, Sarah felt genuine hope for the future. 2 years after the incident, Sarah was appointed director of the BCI. During her investiture ceremony, she reflected on how far they had come. The reforms she had initiated were beginning to bear fruit. Complaints of police violence had decreased by 30%, and public trust in the police had significantly improved. But Sarah knew the work wasn't finished. There would always be challenges to face, prejudices to combat, injustices to correct. However, she was ready to face them, strengthened by her experience and renewed determination. In conclusion to her investiture speech, Sarah declared, "2 years ago, I lived through an experience that could have broken me. Instead, it made me stronger and more determined. It reminded me why I chose this career in the first place. To make a difference, to make our society more just and safer for all. Today, I renew this commitment. Together, we can build a justice system that truly deserves its name, As Sarah left the stage to applause, she knew that her story was just one chapter in the long struggle for justice and equality. But it was an important chapter, one that had the power to inspire change and pave the way for a better future. Power can corrupt, but as Sarah had proven, it can also be a tool for positive change. Her journey, from victim to reformer, was a testimony to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of one person to make a difference.